So I got a question from a guy called Matt, who is having a tough time attacking the turtle of really tough judo players. I mean, judo players, a lot of their groundwork is often defensive, going into a super tight turtle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was finding it difficult to use the basic attacks that we were showing, or the fundamental attacks that we were showing on super high level judo players. I think
my advice to you is don't worry about it. You're going to get stood up in about 5 seconds anyway. But
we'll go a little bit deep, because in the jiu-jitsu context,
yes, of course,
you often see judo guys come to a jiu-jitsu club and just stay
in
turtle.
Yeah, and some of them even just like prone, face down, only gripping their collars without actually establishing.
And I mean, I want to take this. I think the same techniques that work, against all the other people will also work here. But it's more of a question, I think, of training progression. How do you take a technique from learning it in an app to getting it to work on white belts, to getting it to work on blue belts, to getting it to work on that really tough brown belt, to getting it to work on top level elite judo players?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the progression of how we train a technique.
Well, there you go. Like, that's one of the things one of the things that led me to the mentality that created this system that we taught in these apps is transitioning from what is the technique that I don't know to beat this guy to what is the overall approach that I'm missing to be able to get to a high level. And invariably the question I would always ask is, well, I can't make this one move work, so I need to learn another move. And
so let's just talk turtle.
Yeah.
So we're here.
So we're talking about spiral rides. So if I can just get you to turn a little bit here. All right, like punching the arm in here, driving the person onto their shoulder. We're talking about, if I can get you to turn back in, right, like, lead knee jams, rear knee jams, horse collars, that kind of stuff. We went over a few things in the app. I know we did a Q&A session previously where we went over a few things. I'm honestly at a loss as to how to offer more techniques. I'm sure they exist, but like you said, the key here is training progression.
Right.
Is how do I, any technique, provided we're not talking about like shooting chi at people, that has like a valid physiological element to it, any technique can work.
Right.
It just depends on the experience of the practitioner that you're trying it on. For example, the classical.
Okay, so you've just learned you're a blue belt, say, and you've just learned the lead knee jam against turtle.
Yeah.
How are you going to incorporate training that technique into your training? And your goal is to eventually take out that top level judo.
Exactly. So the first thing you have to do is get to a point where you're actually performing the technique correctly. This is one of the things that we assume a lot of the time that we try a technique a few times and or we rep it a few times, we drill it a few times, and then we go and try it when rolling and it doesn't quite work. Like that move doesn't work.
Right. Guilty.
I used to do that too. One of the things that I try to do as a filtering process for our systems is, we've just discussed this before, is model the elite practitioners in the game. If somebody routinely hits a particular technique at the black belt level, then that move works. It definitely works. And if it's not working for me, it's not working for me for one of two reasons. I'm either doing it wrong, which is probably like 80% of the time, or there's a physical attribute that person possesses that I don't possess.
They have legs 8 feet long.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that every move that is performed at the black belt level can be performed by every person. For instance, I stay away from modeling the Meow brothers for that reason. Not that they aren't amazing jiu-jitsu practitioners, but their level of flexibility and also, frankly, disregard for their own joints is not something that we can draw good conclusions from for having workable knuckles and ankles and anything else really. So when we understand that, okay, we've got techniques that we know work because there isn't a clear physical attribute, it's being hit repeatedly, there must be something you're doing wrong, which frankly means you need to drill it more at the beginning. One of my pet peeves with the way jiu-jitsu is taught is, okay, here's this move, guys, 5 minutes. Okay, here's this other move, guys, 5 minutes on that, now we roll. When I rep stuff out, even stuff that I know, stuff that I've been doing for years, and I do a few reps to keep it sharp, man, the first 10 or 20 reps are garbage. As far as actual real precision, those reps are garbage. That's a warm-up. When we do rep ranges at our academy, It's not like, oh, let me do 3 reps and then you do 3 reps. Like, I'd say 10 in a row for each person, just to get a groove going where you're starting to recognize where the errors are, and you're going to start to feel smoother. Whereas if you keep switching, you never really build up, a groove. It'd be like trying to get good at, get stronger by, I'm going to do 3 reps and then wait, another 3 reps again, and never do more than 3 reps. Never increase your body's ability to perform a greater number of reps. So that the first part of the curve is just don't go out and try it in rolling right away, unless it's an incredibly simple movement. Like if it's just, push the guys up. Obviously, you can start it, but
Sure.
the more complex the movement, the more you need to rep it to the point where it's automatic. And then, and I'm not coming up with anything original here. Other people have echoed this sentiment. Do the move on white belts. Then do the move. If you're a blue belt, do the move on beginner white belts. Now, there are 3 categories of training. Probably, you could probably subdivide this to more than 3, but there's guys you can kick their ass. There's guys that you're roughly around the same level as them, and there's guys that can kick your ass. And they each type of training partner offers you a different opportunity to practice different things. Mm-hmm. If you're starting out with a new movement and trying to do it on guys that can kick your ass, unless it's a very simple defensive movement, it's extremely unlikely to succeed. Mm-hmm. So that's your progression. Do it first on guys that you can beat, then do it on guys that you can beat but you have a hard time beating, then do it on guys that you can barely beat, then et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
and you can also set it up. You can say, look, can we start with you? Hello, little white belt. Can we start with you in your turtle, please?
Yes.
And
situational rolling.
Yeah. And then hello, slightly bigger white belt. Can we start with you in your turtle? Hello, giant 200-pound and 250-pound white belt. Hello, little blue belt.
Yeah, exactly. Because skill is only one variable. That's an excellent point. Strength is a variable, athleticism is a variable, size is a variable. So you might be able to execute a technique on a 140-pound brown belt, but not on a 250-pound white belt. So it means you need to make adjustments. And so that's the beauty of what we're doing with Jiu-Jitsu, is that we are, if we're doing it the way it, the way that is genuine to what has made it effective, is we are performing a science. We are performing experiments on angles, body mechanics, things like that, and efficiency. And every experiment is going to yield a particular result. And if we can replicate that result enough, then it becomes a valid technique that we use across the board in Jiu-Jitsu. So you might have to go through an experiment process. You're going to have to become an amateur scientist and figure out how this works relative to your body type, relative to another person's body type.
Well, if you're talking amateur scientist, then you also have to be willing to throw out ideas that didn't work, or replace ideas with a better idea.
Absolutely.
The 4 humors was a good idea for its time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of replaced by a better understanding of the cardiovascular and lymphatic system.
Absolutely, yeah. Astrology was a great idea at the time, but
it was the best they could do.
It was exactly.
Alchemy is a better example.
Exactly, it was the best they could do. I know I've gone through this, especially recently. For those of you that follow the jiu-jitsu scene a lot, the advent of, or the revolution rather, in leg locks recently. There's a lot of stuff that we thought worked. That was the pinnacle of the art that is basically obsolete at this point. I've learned things in the last year from multiple practitioners that are, in some cases, literally the opposite movement of what I thought it was, and that works so much better. And if we're not willing to abandon outdated views and embrace evidence, then we're no longer doing jiu-jitsu. Now we're doing astrology.